Molly here, and before we dive into our expectations for this final season of Star Trek Discovery, I just want to take a moment and ask everyone, if you like what we're doing here and you're not subscribed, to please hit that subscribe button, because we do not yet meet the threshold necessary to get monetization for our channel, which means every ad you see on our channel, all of that money is going to YouTube. We see none of it. So if you would kindly hit that subscribe button, we would greatly appreciate it. Now, let's dive into our expectations for the end of Star Trek Discovery.
We watched 3 items, I suppose, going into this. About a week ago, the Discovery cast and executives were at South by Southwest, and there was a YouTube panel discussion with them. And then we watched the trailer from last year's San Diego Comic-Con for Star Trek Discovery Season 5. And then about a month ago, they had a official season trailer for Season 5. So we've got those 3 things fresh in our mind. We watched them last night in preparation for this video. I have absolutely no reason to believe that this season is going to be anything different than the previous 4.
Yeah. For the most part, the panel was just the actors and actresses saying goodbye to one another because they won't be working together anymore. Talking about how much they love each other and the found family that they have formed. Even though that's not my kind of thing, you know what? Power to them if that's how they feel. Where I took issue was that the first thing that really stuck out to me was when Michelle Paradise actually said that canon mattered when they were laying out the stories for Star Trek Discovery, and I was just like, oh, okay, sure, lady. I don't know where you get that idea, but it doesn't seem to me. Oh, unless they're talking about canon within their own little universe.
They don't follow their own canon.
Yeah, so it's like, whatever. The other thing that really struck me was that there was some weirdness toward the end of the panel. It was nearly an hour long. Some of the stuff toward the end, they seemed to think that they were doing something really important by making this diverse show. I just wanted to just reach into the television and say, you know what? That's news to people like Avery Brooks and Kate Mulgrew, that you guys are the first to put together this diverse cast and just that what you're doing is so important. It really aggravated me because they act like things that happened in the 80s and 90s, and even going further back with people like Nichelle Nichols.
George Takei.
Yeah, like, what are they thinking? Just the... I'm just going to say this. The narcissism of this... I hate to call them a generation, but I think most of them are either millennial or Gen Z.
Kurtzman, I think, is Gen X, but he thinks like he's about 12, so it doesn't really matter.
Maybe it's just the Hollywood bubble. I don't know. But these people are so ignorant to what has come before. And it's like, but you're working on a show that you're talking about how there's been, 990 episodes so far, and that you were part of that. Well, didn't you ever go back and watch what came before you? And I'm starting to think the answer to that is no. Actually, I've been thinking that for a long time. As I said, the beginning of the panel was just ridiculous and just like, whatever. But then toward the end, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe some of the dumbass things they were saying. Previously, I thought some of those actors were kind of, I don't know, not dirt stupid. But at this point, I'm not going to say they're dirt stupid, but definitely ignorant. Very ignorant.
The last 10 to 15 minutes of that panel, you and I talked last night about what we were going to mention in this video, and I'm going to be careful here because I don't want to open up a topic that I really don't want to have a flame war in the comments. But there was one answer in particular toward the end by a cast member that I was offended by the way it was phrased. And then, like you mentioned, Michelle Paradise trying to mention that she was trying to give these points about what she was trying to do in the series. And she mentioned keeping canon important. And I just rolled my eyes at that. And the weird thing is, all the praise they were doing this entire hour panel, they were praising it for the diversity, for the inclusion of the cast members. And you know what? I'm going to give them credit that, at least as far as the type of cast members that they had on this probably was a little bit more diverse than has happened before. But they didn't mention anything in narrative. What has this added, this series, to the Star Trek continuity, that canon that Michelle Paradise seems to think is so important? Because it was weird. Like, there were a couple of times in that panel when they were mentioning that phrase that Michael Burnham uses, that "let's fly," that's supposed to be like Picard's "engage." And the way they were talking is that was some sort of secret handshake that every time they use that, what it represents is some passing through a gateway into a better world type place. It was really weird the way they were using that. So when you hear that "let's fly" in Discovery, do know that the cast and crew of this series think that that phrase means something from a virtue point of view.
It was definitely a virtue signal every time they said that. It was weird. It was like watching a cult talk to each other. Yeah, it gave me a bit of an icky creep vibe.
And then if we move on to the San Diego Comic-Con, which happened last year, that trailer. And this had to do with, there were like some baddies on the ship, and they somehow kicked Michael Burnham into space, and somehow she formed a spacesuit around her, and then she jumped on the ship, and she was in warp, and then this starship was holding the ship or trying to grab it with a tractor beam, and then over the radio, or whatever they count as radio in this universe, Michael Burnham was arguing with this captain, and I guess he was mansplaining to her about what he wanted to do, and then she was just talking down to him. And the visual effects for this whole thing, and you look at the movement of the entity that was supposed to be Michael Burnham, the person in the astronaut outfit, it didn't look natural. It looked like it was cheaply done. And the whole mansplaining thing, which was pretty much the whole clip, that thing from a year ago didn't give me any feelings that season 5 is going to be any different than the previous seasons. They haven't learned anything.
Yeah, that mansplaining thing, that was so unprofessional, and the bickering that they were doing was like the dialogue you would get between two teenage siblings. I mean, it was really appalling. It is not something that I would expect to see in a show that's supposed to be about professionals, especially a pair of captains like they were supposed to be. And those people have no business captaining anything.
We made a video a few weeks ago about Andromeda, Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda series. And that's what Discovery is supposed to be here, is reforming the Federation after being displaced out of time. But I wouldn't listen to Michael Burnham or anybody else on that ship when it came to, well, here's what the Federation and Starfleet used to stand for. Really? Because I remember Michael Burnham and what she stands for. Mutiny. I do not understand why they are still, at the end here, building up the Michael Burnham character. I have no idea. The mansplaining, she was arguing with this guy just like she did in season 1, because that's the thing in that South by Southwest panel. They had a small segment there where they were trying to point out the character growth that happened with these characters. They were trying to say that in addition to Tilly, which I do believe there was some growth with Tilly, Michael Burnham had some character growth. And I would argue how. She was arguing back in this mansplaining trailer the same thing she did with Georgiou in season 1. She hasn't grown at all. Her character, other than having a different hairstyle, and she talks kind of breathy now versus how she talked in season 1, her character has not grown at all. Last season, we keep bringing up that one line from her when Book was going to try to seek some sort of engagement with that species for destroying his planet, and Michael Burnham was asked, well, how is this any different than what you were doing in season 1 with the Klingons? And her response was, well, I had an intrinsic understanding of Klingon culture, which she did not. It showed she did not. She didn't understand what the Torchbearer was about. She didn't understand anything about Klingon culture. All she had was PTSD from when her family was attacked. So even last season it showed she hasn't done any growth at all.
Yeah, I question anyone who says they can relate to her character. It's like, what are you relating to? This person started out as a mutineer war criminal at the very beginning of the series.
And did nothing to redeem herself.
She did 6 months in jail, and that's it. And how many people died?
She became a ship's captain. She is leading people. She's the head of a starship. Like on a starship, that is the ultimate authority, is the ship's captain. This person, who at the end of season 1, she even said this when she was giving that ridiculous speech in front of everybody.
This is Starfleet.
Yeah, she said, well, we gave into fear, I gave into fear. So then you thought maybe after that season they would start doing some sort of redemption arc with her, starting with season 2. No, because as we were talking about that clip last night, the one with the mansplaining, and Molly mentioned that reminded her of, I think it was in season 2, and that Michael Burnham and a few others were like in these clear shuttle things flying around some asteroid field, and this guy was lipping off to her. As he was lipping off to her, and she was arguing with him like he got hit by an asteroid and got killed. Molly said last night when we were watching the mansplaining, she's like, well, isn't this the same thing that they were doing in season 2? So I don't understand, from the Michael Burnham character to even the narrative, how did they grow? What has changed from seasons 1, 2, all the way up to seasons 5 here?
No, she hasn't changed. Not at all. The only problem is that now she's in the captain's seat, making all sorts of horrible decisions. And in that same scene, when she was riding that starship, I guess she was in their warp bubble, so...
By riding, she was in her spacesuit attached to the top of the ship's hull as it was looking like it was traveling through warp.
Yeah, it was.
It was one of the stupidest things I've ever seen.
It reminded me of back in the 80s, that TV show with Ron Perlman and Linda Hamilton, that Beauty and the Beast show. And how the Beast, Ron Perlman, Vincent, he would ride on top of the subway by holding on top of the roof of the subway. He would ride through the tunnels, and they would show that, and it would look so ridiculous. And then there's Michael Burnham on top of this starship. It reminded me of that. I was actually kind of chuckling because it was just so ridiculous.
And visually, as that was going on, then you had some guy mansplaining to her, and then she was arguing with this guy.
Yeah.
The whole scene was so ridiculous. And then the official trailer that came out like a month ago, where they were trying to set up some emotional final season thing and they have one last mystery to solve. I don't understand what any of Discovery was about. When this show is done, 5 years from now, what are people going to say about Discovery?
Well, think about this. This final season apparently is going to be them searching for this mystery box artifact that is apparently just too dangerous and to have fall into other people's hands. And Stamets is holding that key or whatever it is that's the key to finding the thing. It was like the Goonies and Stargate got together and had a really stupid baby.
What they're probably going to find, the most powerful object in the universe, is just a picture of Michael Burnham.
Inside J.J. Abrams' mystery box.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a picture of Michael Burnham, because that you'll find out that what they really found, what they were worried about the whole time, this whole season, is that Michael Burnham is the most powerful entity in the universe. Because I've suspected from several seasons ago that eventually she's going to be like V'ger from the motion picture, where she's just going to like combine and become this like next evolution of consciousness, because that's how they're setting up Michael Burnham to be. She's this martyr, savior, everything all rolled into one. And I just... I do not understand why anybody would get any value out of Discovery, because during that South by Southwest panel, some of the stuff they were talking about, the actors in particular, and what they thought they were doing as far as any sort of useful thing with the series, and I scratched my head at that and going, I remember watching a few years ago, they mentioned in Hollywood a lot of times actors never see the final cuts of what they actually performed for. And it makes me wonder if these actors that are working on Discovery, if they never actually see the final product. They just know they have this close-knit family on set, and they read these lines, and then that's the end of it. They don't actually see. Does Sonequa Martin Green know that her character is a war criminal, not only for the murdering of that torchbearer, but assisting in planting that bomb in the Klingons, and then giving an even larger bomb to L'Rell so that she could coerce the Klingons to go with her program, or they were going to blow up the Klingon homeworld? Does Sonequa Martin Green even know that that's what her character has done?
She read those lines when she acted them, so she must know that. Again, it makes me question these people. Like, you acted out a scene in which your character committed a war crime. How do you think this show is good? I don't understand. How do you think that's a good message? You are glorifying war crimes and thinking that that's okay. I'm just going to say this. I've seen people complaining how, the Geneva Conventions are outdated and they're holding us back, and the notion of war crimes is just stupid. Well, you know what? I don't know. Maybe you turn on the TV and maybe do you want to rethink that? Because I think that maybe we should have been taking that shit a little bit more seriously, because things are looking pretty damn shitty right now.
Some people think that it's outdated. A concept of war crimes is outdated. That's why I don't understand Michael Burnham, unless this final season is about her realizing the horrible stuff that she's done, and she volunteers to step down and say, I got caught up in all these crises that were going on, and now that things have slowed down and I can think a bit, I was not a good leader. I was not a good role model for my people, because Michael Burnham was a horrible leader, a horrible role model, a horrible person. Not the actress, the actual character of Michael Burnham. I mean, she is a horrible, horrible person.
Well, think about this. In that South by Southwest interview, Alex Kurtzman himself said that when he was first approached, he had no interest in doing a Star Trek series. Except then, I don't know if he was told or what happened there, but once the premise became that it was going to be headed by a black woman, then all of a sudden he had an interest in doing a Star Trek series. So that tells me he really didn't have any interest in doing a Star Trek series. He wanted to do a series that was led by a black actress. Well, that's it.
Alex Kurtzman's a liar of the highest order anyway. He was saying that to virtue signal, not because it was the truth. And that's the thing. How much diversity and inclusion can you have that offsets stories with war crimes? Because that's all they seem to talk about in that South by Southwest was that sort of material. Mm-hmm. I'm not even saying that should not be talked about. Hey, that's part of what they were doing. I think all of us can see that that's what they were doing, was trying to give a more diverse cast opportunities on this show. But then you took that diverse cast and you had them do war crimes.
Well, apparently war crimes are okay as long as they're committed by people who are not in the majority.
We keep going back to that South by Southwest interview because that's the first time I heard these people talk since leading up to season 1, when you had Jason Isaacs and Mary Chieffo lipping off, like attacking the fans right away. So I hadn't followed behind the scenes stuff since then because it was so disgusting. So listen to these people that were on the South by Southwest panel. They weren't overtly offensive until like the last 10 minutes. And then some of the stuff they said, there was one story in particular that offended me. And I'm hoping it was a bad phrasing versus that's what that person meant to say. But now it's like, I cannot wait for the show to get over with. This Discovery series is something that's going to show, when people look back at it, a time when people thought it was important to virtue signal about moving forward with things versus actually just moving forward with things.
And let's not forget the virtue signaling. It was all about identity and had zero to do with any kind of morality.
If anything, we've regressed, because I still think this series might be able to be salvaged if we find out in season 5 they were in the mirror universe all along, and they were struggling just to survive with any sort of ethics in a mirror universe. But in a proper Star Trek universe, this is a horrible set of characters, this is going to be looked at in a very negative light. Once this all dies down, in that South by Southwest interview, they were trying to claim that this was some sort of groundbreaking series, that they were pushing ahead with all these insults that were just being thrown at them because of racism and sexism. There was no other reasons that they were being criticized except for those reasons.
Nah, it couldn't possibly be that within the first 2 episodes they'd committed a bunch of war crimes to start off with. And that was that was under the captaincy of Captain Georgiou, not Mirror Universe Empress Georgiou. So, as I said, these people, morality doesn't even seem to come into play here. It's all about identity, and I don't play that way.
They're setting up a miniseries with Section 31 based around a character in her own mirror universe who was a space Hitler, and they're building a series around her, a mini-series around her. At least that's the last I've heard. So what sort of morality do we think is going to be in that? It's not enough to have diversity and inclusion. If you don't follow it up with showing that you have ethics, it doesn't matter. It just says that somebody's that diverse can do horrible things. I don't think that's a good message to stick out there that, hey, that's the most diverse, horrible person we've seen on camera.
To these people, the ends justify the means, and I just don't agree with that. I'm glad this is going to be over soon because, as far as I'm concerned, there has been nothing redeeming about Star Trek Discovery. Nothing.
This is the worst television series of the 21st century. I don't even think it's even close.
Well, unless there's some other show that's glorifying war crimes on a regular basis and saying that that's actually proper morality.
My prediction, because that's what this video is supposed to be about, is that this is going to be more of the same. And what they're going to do is try to stick in some artificial, sappy crying of everybody going their separate ways and how this was a long journey, but look how far we've come. That's what this is going to be. This is going to be a normal Discovery season, and they're just going to tack on this crying, sentimental crap in it to try to make it seem bigger than what it is. I will not miss this series. It cannot be in the rearview mirror soon enough. We rewatched our video before Picard Season 3 started, and there was a lot of, well, maybe if they do this, maybe if they do that, maybe if they do that. Like, we were trying to see how Season 3 before it started of Picard could have been good. Nah, there's nothing in this season they can do short of Michael Burnham resigning her commission and them spending a lot of effort showing all the mistakes, not just Burnham, but all the mistakes the rest of those people have made throughout their 5 years. This is a horrible ship that if I was a planet and saw them coming, I would shoot them down. They're a danger to entire solar systems when these people are around.
Yep. So I'm so glad it's going to be over, yes, because I predict more of the same. In fact, I predict this is going to be even dumber than it had been previously. As I said, in that trailer, I saw shades of Goonies, I saw shades of Stargate, and I saw J.J. Abrams' Mystery Box. Michelle Paradise can say all she wants that they're paying close attention to canon, but it just kind of makes me think, so is this what the Chat GPT spit out for you after you said, I want Goonies and Stargate with a mystery box? So that's my prediction for what this season is going to be, and at the end, I am going to say good riddance.
I am not putting any positive spin on what's coming up here. We try really hard when we are looking into something to say, well, let's look for some positives. When Strange New World starts back up, I can see some positives I can talk about there. Discovery's nothing but garbage. I have nothing positive to say about Star Trek Discovery, except it's going to end soon, and I'm very happy about that.
So, anyway, what do you guys expect for this upcoming season? Are you guys glad this is going to be finally the end? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Take care.